Hello, YouTube. Hey, hey.
Why are you tangled? There we go.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Hey. Oh. Oh. Have coffee.
Oh, wait.
Josh, you're gonna try out to be the Cowboys kicker?
I think have never kicked before, but I don't think that's stopping anybody.
No, I don't think it is either.
Someone said they were at a bar last night, watching the game, and they said by the fourth one, he's like, I was legit. It was a packed bar because of course it would be. He's like, I was legitimately worried that someone was gonna shoot something else. He's like, the anger was just palatable, or palpable, whatever that word is. Absolutely unhinged. But listen, they still did what they needed to do. And there is
They did.
no one over the age of 30 being a quarterback.
That's true.
As it should be.
Yep. Josh, do we want to try your video now just to see if it works?
Oh yeah, let's do this. It's also, as I was listening here, I'm just gonna play a test video because I want your genuine reactions initially.
Oh yeah, sure.
But I'll just share my screen and we'll do it that way. Oh yeah, I think I can do an input device, so let's do this.
Yeah, see if it works, and I can mess around on some settings on my end so it
Awesome.
shows up.
What are we doing?
What happens if I hit watch stream?
Input device, output device. Yeah, it doesn't look like I get it.
If you play a video, will it just play through though? I wonder.
Well, I'm currently playing it right now.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So theoretically, it should be going.
Yeah.
If not, that's okay.
Yeah.
I know there are like, hold on. And then I'm gonna go ahead and turn off stop streaming. I think what eventually I can do for like future things like this is there we go. My stream was weird. There are ways that like streamers will like grab the audio from like their whatever game they're playing and just run it through Discord, but that requires an app or two that so I have a few what I'm following, so I might just push this one. This one's not time sensitive, so I'll push this one back a week or two and kind of experiment.
Yeah, we can figure it out. I can look into it too.
I think I found something on Quora that could be helpful. So again, I know that this is a common problem, so
yeah,
I think there's just a specific routing issue that we'll figure it out.
Yeah, sounds good.
I will go to my backup. My 7 backups. Yes, I do have. Yes. Otherwise, I'm good to go.
Sounds good. I think I'm good as well.
I'm good. Ready.
Okay. Let me double check my audio setup. Audio setup did get reset, so maybe that's just what happens. Yeah, I'm good now.
Sweet. I will hit record.
Recording.
Welcome to the Fifth End Goal podcast. My name is Aaron. I'm joined once again by my good friends Josh and Johnny. We are back for episode 95. Josh and Johnny, good to be back with you both. Josh, how was your week, man? How you been?
Week's good. Classes just started for me. I only have classes one day a week, which is great. But it is 7:45 a.m. all the way till 9:30 p.m. Are my class times. So big day for classes, but it's only once a week. So this is the first time I've ever had like a chill schedule like this. So we're gonna enjoy it.
Nice.
And I'm gonna enjoy the fact that it was 80 again today in Dallas, and I don't know how to dress. I have sweaters and I have coats, and I have not used them since the last winter like blowout last February. So I do not know how to live right now.
Yeah, kind of unseasonably warm in Ohio today as well. Johnny, what's up, man? How you been?
Good. I have Buckeye basketball, Blue Jackets this week, so good. Good time getting to Columbus and watching my favorite teams. My terrible streak of going to watch my favorite teams and then losing.
That was your fault.
I don't think the Blue Jackets is my fault.
Blue Jackets is not your fault.
I don't take responsibility for them.
No one does. That's the issue.
Yes, I am doing well. I'm also already 70 years old because I feel the weather in my foot when it's this damp in Ohio. So I'm already 70 years old, but we're good. We're good.
Amazing. Well, I'm doing well. I echo Johnny's sentiments. I went with Johnny to that Ohio State basketball game in which they lost a very brutal game to Minnesota. They're in the midst of a 4-game slide, so not great there. They're trying their best to work themselves out of the bubble picture, just out of the tournament if they don't turn things around here quickly. But it was good. Got to kind of...
But you know what? At least we're not Kentucky.
Honestly, Kentucky's turning it around. Yeah. Kentucky's turning it around.
Tennessee.
I would have agreed with you prior to that Tennessee win, though, Josh.
I'm going to. Don't worry. This is a temporary uptick. They are not even going to make the NIT this year. Mark my words.
Interesting.
That's a spicy take there, Josh. A spicy.
That
take.
I think that requires them to miss the NCAA tournament, and then they just happen to opt out of the NIT. Like, there's no way the NIT is not going to be like, nah, we don't want Kentucky.
Johnny always does hot takes. I want a hot take.
You know what?
They're not even going to make the NIT. They're not even going to qualify for the NIT.
Kentucky,
okay, that's my hot take.
Okay, not qualifying is just not correct because Aaron, right?
That's why it's a hot take. That's why it's a hot take, Johnny.
They could be 8-30, and the NIT would say, "Please come play." Like, we would love for you to be here. That it's
I said not qualify for the NIT.
anyway.
And this means one of two things, Johnny. This means they are so bad that they never actually make it in, or they make it into the NCAA tournaments.
I
There's
was
two
going to
ways
say,
this
and
can
with
happen.
that, the Kentucky Wildcats just won the championship this year. Anyways. Well,
It only
yeah, my
happens when
week is...
Johnny makes the predictions. I
Yeah,
didn't make a
yeah.
Josh guarantee. I didn't make a Johnny guarantee.
That's true. That is a good point. Yeah, my
No
week
one
was
knows if my
good.
guarantees work out.
A lot of NFL football this weekend, and with that, we'll just kind of jump right into it because, yeah, that's what happened this week. We had what we're calling Super Wild Card Weekend now that the playoff field has
Yes,
expanded.
super.
So super, because we had 6 games this weekend, 2 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and of course that Monday night game last night. But there's a lot to get to, so I'm kind of just down to open up the floor, so to speak, and we can just talk about whatever games we want. Was there anything that jumped out to you guys? I know there was kind of something to look at in each game, maybe outside of the 49ers just beating down Seattle. But even there's things that you can pick up on. Like Brock Purdy is continuing to play really well
Mr.
for the
Relevance.
49ers as they win their 11th straight game. But guys, anything jump out to you? Or maybe,
My
Johnny, you talked about being 70 because of your foot. Maybe you're also 70 because of what the Cincinnati Bengals almost did to you on Sunday night.
Oh, can we talk about the?
Cool.
Let's just open it up with the thick six. Can we just talk about that?
Yes.
Does it count as a thick six when it's a defensive end that's as like large and lean as Sam Hubbard though? Like,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
He's
Like,
still
I mean, that's a rugby. That was
250
a rugby
pounds
player
plus.
essentially.
He is
Yeah.
still
if it
bigger
was
than
DJ
250.
Reader doing it, then it would like
It wasn't
that
a skill
would've been
position.
the best.
It wasn't a
but-
skill position in the classical definition. So I'm counting it.
He was
I'm with Josh on
hustling
this.
down that field. He was way faster than any of us could run. Like,
No, he was hustling. He was good.
I'm telling you, like, nobody appreciates how fast those big guys are running on the field. They are faster than the average person.
Yeah.
So, and they are huge human beings. So we always like make fun of like the thick six and the big fellas like hustling down the field. Hey, they're faster than all of you listening. So, I absolutely, I mean, it's nice to cheer for a team that actually gets some lucky breaks and some fortunate breaks every once in a while. I mean, Logan Wilson made a great play punching that ball out, but Tyler Huntley made honestly, a really dumb play thinking that you could reach the ball over like that, especially 2 yards away. Not the smartest thing. That wasn't what the formation called for. They had multiple players behind him ready to push him into the end zone. Well, if you're going to get pushed into the end zone, you should be going low and trying to just kind of burrow your way through for a yard. If you're trying to jump over, you actually want those guys in front of you to push back the defense so that you can make the jump. So he really, and it's a backup quarterback, you know. Sam Hubbard, I thought for sure Mark Andrews was going to catch him there on that run back. I mean, but that won them the game, especially after Jonah Williams went down with that injury for the Bengals at left tackle. They could not protect and give Joe any sort of time. I think the Ravens, honestly, in the AFC had the best defense in the entire playoffs over in that conference. So, like the Bills won't be able to take advantage of that to the extent that the Ravens were with Roquan Smith and just Owe and all those, just Calais Campbell and all of those great pass rushers that the Ravens have, that just awesome defense. Nobody else will be able to take advantage of that. But Bengals, it's back to the same as last postseason almost, where we're 2 starting offensive linemen going forward. But you know what? They found ways to win, and they always seem to find some ways to win these type of games. So I thought Joe actually played well. Just didn't get the ball. He couldn't get the ball. They had the ball, I think, 3 possessions in the first half. Like Baltimore played the style of game that they had to and wanted to win that game. Like everything went their way really until that fumble. And that fumble cost them because the Bengals defense, while, you know, everybody's always like, well, they're okay. Like the Bengals defense is actually really, really good. They just don't have, they're really good because there's not a hole. Everybody's solid all over the place. Safety is really, really good. Corners, okay. Linebacker is really good. Run defense, solid. Pass rush, okay. Like there's no poor aspect of the defense to take advantage of. at the same time, there's not one aspect that the Bengals lean on heavily where they just have a corner who takes away half the field. So that's where it's a really, really good defense, but it's not anything insane or special that pops off the screen. They just keep teams out of the end zone typically, and you saw that again. And that's really why they won the game. The defense just held Baltimore out of the end zone time after time after time, and held my breath on that Hail Mary. I mean, Prochet nearly had it. Nearly had it.
Yep. Well, that was that was an entertaining game for sure. The Bengals to play the Bills. Also in the AFC, the Jacksonville Jaguars are now playing the Kansas City Chiefs. And why? Because they overcame a 27-point deficit. Trevor Lawrence threw 4 picks in the first half. It seemed like Jacksonville was just buried. Seemed like this game was just going to get out of it. It really kind of was out of hand for a second.
Mm-hmm.
But then the Chargers charged, or what's the verb of Chargers? Charged? Whatever
they
it is.
Depleted.
Charged sounds like they were good, so depleted.
They depleted. They depleted.
Someone forgot to plug them in the night before.
They ran out of juice, man. They ran out of juice.
Guys, this was the first time in NFL history where a team was +5 in turnover margin because if you remember, there was also a punt that went right off of a Jacksonville player's helmet. And right into the lap of the Chargers, who took over at like the 20-yard line. So +5 in turnover margin, which, by the way, they were +5 in the first half, and lost. Now, obviously, Brandon Staley was under some heat before this game because, you know, you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert. You have some of the weapons that they have, considering what he did in Week 18, where he played some of the players that... Look, the Chargers, we talked about it last week. The Chargers had their seed locked up. They weren't moving up. They were not going to move down. And they still decided to play some players, including Mike Williams, who fractured his back, did not play. In a game like this, I know the Chargers choked away a 27-point lead. You can't tell me Mike Williams on the field doesn't make an impact there and prevents them, because the Chargers ultimately fell short in the red zone. They had the ball with so many opportunities to score and take an even bigger lead, and they didn't. And that led Trevor Lawrence. By the way, a ton of credit to Trevor Lawrence. Probably the worst first half in NFL history almost, coupled with the just a tremendous poise. It would have been so easy to shut it down. That was a miserable first half. But he kept his head high. His teammates believed in him. He turned it around. Yes. He played absolutely fantastic. So congrats to Jacksonville. But all that being said, I started to talk about Brandon Staley. For now, he's still with the team. The Chargers have fired their offensive coordinator and I believe their special teams coach as well. So sounds like they're kind of taking that route. Sounds like he may still be in the fold at the head coaching spot, probably with the NFL's hottest seat next year.
As of an hour ago, he just got confirmed for one more season.
Once a team is specific about coordinators getting fired, it's unlikely that the coach gets fired afterwards. Because if you fire the head coach, it's assumed the coordinators are all gone pretty much. So once you heard that, it was pretty confirmed that he was staying. His saving grace is that it's only his second year. And I think that's the only reason that he is staying on, is because it's his second year, given I don't really still see an excuse, mostly because of how they lost that game. And what you mentioned, Aaron, like the week before, nearly getting Joey Bosa hurt again as well. Like it wasn't the fact that they lost in the first round. If they would have just had this shootout with Jacksonville, and it's a great game, and both teams played fantastic, and don't get me wrong, Jacksonville's a really good team, I think you would have been like, okay, it's very harsh to fire him. But because of the meltdown that game was, and that's not the first time, obviously it's the first time it's 27 points, but how many games have we all watched of the Chargers when the first half they come out firing, they're just crushing the team right down the field. Justin Herbert looks incredible. They're up like 21-10 at half or 21-14, and they just look unstoppable. Second half, 3 points. Second half, 7 points. And they lose. They blow the lead. And it's because they get conservative on offense. And I don't know how much Brandon Staley, he's more of a defensive guy. I don't know how much he gets involved in the offense, but it's ultimately his responsibility for that play calling and that being extremely conservative. That's why Lombardi's gone, offensive coordinator. there's no excuse for that with Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert, I will say this, he does have to start taking some of this blame.
Yep.
We are blaming Brandon Staley, and that's the easy thing to do. It's easy to burn the coach when you see how talented the quarterback is. Justin Herbert also blew this lead, guys. Like, Justin Herbert also missed throws. He also just had to score one more touchdown, one more field goal, and this team wins. And I know they missed a field goal too. So I'm not saying man, Justin specifically blew this. The whole team blew it, which means Herbert needs to take his fair share of criticism here too. He has not been clutch at the end of games in general, regular season or playoffs. So that is also something to keep an eye out for really going forward with this team. And can Justin, kind of like Lamar Jackson, get over that end of game hurdle that Lamar had that issue with, especially early on in his career too?
Yeah. So that game was interesting. You're right though. And I know it's easier for me to sit here with the hindsight and having watched this game, but even down 27-0, there wasn't a thought in my mind where I was like, okay, this game's over. I'm going to change the channel. Time to watch something else. I didn't have that thought because I'm like, this is the Chargers. I've seen crazier things. It was really the biggest comeback we've seen. There was a 28-point comeback in 2013. If you remember, Andrew Luck came back 28 points against the Kansas City Chiefs. And this was in a lot of ways very similar, not quite as high scoring. I think that Colts Chiefs game was in the 50s, but very similar to that. I'm like, I was old enough to remember that game. And it happened again, 27 points. That is the third biggest comeback in NFL playoff history. So that's kind of the AFC. We've touched on that. Guys, how about over to the NFC, where, Josh, you're right in the thick of it in Dallas. They dismantle Tom Brady. They take a 31-14 victory over the Bucs. And yes, now the Cowboys are playing the 49ers, but I think also part of this story, and I'm curious if there's maybe the vibes are in Texas right now. Yes, a playoff win, a road win that the Cowboys have not had since 95. None of us have been alive since that's happened. But also Tom Brady, what's the next step for him? I think that's all kind of part of this discussion.
Oh, absolutely. And my browser's being super slow right now, so I can't pull up the article I was going to pull up. But this is a Tom Brady, like you said, we haven't seen since really 95, and really he's had playoff losses, obviously. He has not won every Super Bowl that he's been to. This is in one sense nothing new for fans of TP12. But dude threw 70 passes last night and did not connect on as many as he expected to. Now, part of that was Cowboys played very tight. There wasn't a lot of room for error, and frankly, he doesn't have Gronk. And him not having Gronk, I don't think it's a detriment to him to say that he's better with Gronk. Michael Jordan was better with Scottie Pippen and the weird guy. I'm trying to remember his name.
Yes.
And so, I don't think I don't mean to demean his legacy by saying that him without Gronk is a less effective weapon, but. And the reality is that not only did Dak Prescott have a fairly solid performance, especially as of late, I think more importantly, the Cowboys defense figured out what to do and how to pinpoint the weaknesses of Brady's receivers at this time. And so in one sense, they didn't have to make all of their extra point attempts if they didn't want to. That wasn't because he missed them. He didn't miss them accidentally, by the way. That was on purpose.
Yeah, for sure.
They were experimenting with new techniques. See if I kick it with my other foot just for fun.
That was the worst case of yips I've ever seen.
Oh my
in
goodness!
A live and
Guys.
Thank goodness for the Cowboys that didn't matter.
I know. I felt bad for him.
I felt terrible because he's actually a good kicker. He's actually a really good kicker. But that's a standalone Monday night playoff game. Everybody's just going to think he's awful. But I was happy to see him at least make that last one to kind of that's what I know. Everybody's like, stop kicking it, kick the extra, go for two. And I'm like, no, actually, that's the worst thing you can do after he's missed 4. He needs to see it go in. It is think of basketball. If you somehow, everybody's had that game where you go or at least start the game like 0 of 6, 0 of 8. Like, you can't hit anything.
Yeah.
You need a free throw to go in, man. You just have to see the ball go through the net. Even if you still lose the game, even if it's just like you just had a terrible game, but the team won. Honestly, if you could just get one bucket, a couple free throws before that game's over, just to kind of like exhale and like throw that game away. That's not who I am. I will be fine because they're going to need him against San Francisco. They're going to desperately need.
They're going to
He'll
absolutely
have to hit big field goals against San Francisco. So
and you need him having a touch of confidence. Yeah, exactly. Well, now, I was going to say, if they pulled him, don't expect him to do anything against when they really need him, which is against a team that is absolutely on fire.
Yeah.
But.
And I think that's the interesting thing for Dallas now. You talked about it, Josh, like 70 passes for Tom Brady. The Buccaneers this whole season, and you're right, Gronk was like, they missed him. They absolutely did. They also missed any semblance of a running game. Like that's
the bigger one.
That was the bigger one. And I think that allowed Micah Parsons, like, I don't think Micah Parsons even had a second thought about the run last night. He was solely, I'm going to get Tom Brady, whether that's tackling him, whether that's batting the ball down, just rushing him, whatever it is. And he did so very effectively, like he's done all season long.
Well, and that's the thing. He was still 53%. Yeah. And so it's, he can only do so much. He can't make him miss tackles.
Yeah. Here's my thought.
Old, guys.
He is. He's 45, and he looks like 45 this
season. He's also old.
I think for the first time in maybe his entire career, maybe a little bit last year, but he finally looked like his age a little bit.
He does. Yeah, he finally feels like a 40-year-old.
And part of it is because, let's be honest, he was given an average roster this year.
Yeah.
And Tom Brady will make, and historically, through his incredible career, made an average roster look and perform like a Super Bowl contender and winner. But he was truly dealt an average roster, and he's 45. He can't overcome an average roster anymore. You have to build him the perfect roster where he's got great running backs, and the offensive line was banged up and injured, and he was pressured more in recent memory than I can even think of. If you look at even just like the last 5 years of the amount of pressures, and I'm sure I don't have him on with me right now. I'm sure there's stats that probably back that up as far as the number of hurries, and he led the NFL in pass attempts again this season. I think he probably comes back next year because I just don't think this man knows what to do without a football in his hands. I kind of wish he wouldn't, because I think the days are gone of him being able to carry a team into the playoffs and win some meaningful games. I think those days are done.
Yeah.
And a team like the Las Vegas Raiders is just going to take a flyer on him to sell some tickets, to sell some jerseys, and say, hey, look, we did something, fans. We picked up Tom Brady. Or, you know what? You know who really loves to pick up veteran quarterbacks in the last year of their career? The Indianapolis Colts. And I'm not saying Tom Brady's going to the Colts, but gosh, how ridiculous would that be if Indy's like, hey, Tom Brady, you beat us for years. Why don't you join us for a year? It's not going to happen, but that would be peak Indianapolis.
I'm going to get very annoyed this offseason when all the Tom Brady apologists start making excuses for why this season went bad. And listen, some of them are legitimate. We just talked about it. Like, Tom Brady can't be throwing the ball more than over 60 times in a game.
Yeah.
No. Patrick Mahomes should not be throwing it over 60 times in a game. No quarterback succeeds with throwing the ball that often, but especially not a 45-year-old Tom Brady with no run game, of course. But you know what some of these problems might also be about? Tom, you retired.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay was figuring out what to do with life after you. Yeah. That's why the Bengals are able to steal an offensive lineman. That's why that's why offensive linemen are leaving. That's why he had to desperately come back and try to regroup the offensive line. Also, the offensive line, for the most part, that's all of those struggles. With the roster, Aaron, I understand what you mean by an average roster, but it was only an average because of the losses that they got in the offseason, mostly because Tom retired and injuries. Otherwise, you look at the talent on the roster, especially on defense and the wide receiver core, and you're like, this is a great team. Even the offensive line looked really good before just everyone's hurt. So he's old. And if teams are honest with themselves, San Francisco, Las Vegas are the two teams that I hear the most, maybe Miami, that he is not the answer. He's not. He's going to be old. He's going to be expensive. It has to be absolutely perfect around him.
Yeah.
Tom, buddy, like, just you should have retired last year. You should have just stayed retired.
That was a high
You
note. Yeah.
You lost in the NFC title game on a last-second field goal to the Rams, who won the Super Bowl.
Yep.
That would have been a great, honestly, a fond memory, good way to go out. You played great in that game still. Like, he has a problem. And far be it from me to tell you, like, what to do with your life. He obviously is the best quarterback ever. He can do what he wants. And if somebody wants to sign him, that's his prerogative. But he has a problem. Like, you have a problem, Tom. You have no idea what to do with yourself outside of football, clearly. Yeah. And for his sake, I hope he can find that. Like, even if it's just in the broadcast booth, like, because this is bad. And I don't know if there's anyone in his life to tell him, like, Tom, it's time to end this. There's other things to do in your life. He's been in the NFL longer than he's spent more years in the NFL than he has out of it. He does not know what to do with himself without the NFL. So I'm sure we'll talk more about this as we go in the offseason, but just prepare yourself, everybody, for the apologists to make all the excuses in the world. And some of them are valid, but at the same time, he's also just old. He can't cover up holes in a team. And every team has holes. Every team does.
Yeah. Well, I kind of think about, I mean, this because we're even in the GOAT conversation. I'm thinking about what happens when Michael Jordan went back, unretired, and went to the Wizards. And he averaged something like 22
something like
points per game, something like that. I mean, it was good.
Still scoring.
Like, good. Yeah, exactly. The Wizards that year, 01-02, they finished 37 and 45.
Yeah, they're not good.
Like, even with Michael Jordan. But the reality is, it was a 38-year-old Michael Jordan. And you can't assume that your legacy and the expectations put upon you, like, are just going to carry over into a new team. Like, and if anything, it's starting to, when Michael Jordan went out with the Bulls, like, there was, I mean, I wasn't super conscious at this point. I don't know how little Josh's brain's memories were forming. I don't think many of them were, but like, there was great fanfare. There was great, like, honor. I mean, he had like almost like a farewell tour. And that's kind of like, I mean, Tom Brady didn't quite get that. He didn't announce, hey, this is going to be my last season. This is what we're going to do. If he wanted to do that, like, this past season, he could have done that. And that could have modified the legacy a little bit. And maybe that's what he wanted. You know, I think a lot of athletes would have gotten a farewell tour. Maybe he's just kind of wanting like one more time around the block for old time's sake. But the reality is, now his legacy is getting tarnished a little bit because he's sticking it out longer than he ought to. And he could have been the 44-year-old who was still pretty decent at football. And now he's the 45-year-old who can't do as much. And if he goes another year, I can't imagine that he's going to be the 46-year-old who won the Super Bowl. I don't see that unless they really build. But if you're the Bucks, why would you? You got to build long term. That's why, again, like you're saying, and I will say, we haven't really hit on this. I know we're going to talk about, you know, a few other teams, but like, this is a very young talent pool that's in the playoffs right now. I believe the oldest quarterback is Jalen Hurts at 29, or Prescott. I think I meant Prescott. Prescott at 29. Everyone else is like 26. I mean, Trevor Lawrence and Brock Purdy.
At 27.
Exactly. I mean, you have some 24-year-olds. Like, this is a very fresh, exciting time for the NFL. This is a transition point. I mean, as far as like how the game is viewed. You don't have Rodgers and you don't have Brady and you don't have any of these traditional powers that were there back in the three of our childhoods. And I think that's a good thing. I think this brings new fans in. This brings new interest in. And I will say, minus the kind of what we expected with 49ers and Seahawks, this was a great slate of games. These were exciting games to watch. There was genuine nerves. There was genuine stakes with all of these. Bills and Bengals struggled because they played teams that wanted to win. They played teams with good execution. It wasn't super. I mean, we can talk about what happened with Cowboys and with the 49ers, but like for the most part, it wasn't incredible. But even then, it wasn't incredibly lopsided. And I think
Oh yeah.
overall, this is a net good. I realize that some viewers might be down because, Tom Brady's not in, so I don't care. Like, I think that's fewer people than you think.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we've seen Bills Mafia, we've seen the Who Day. I don't know what you guys call yourselves. I don't know. Like, there's really good things on the horizon for the NFL, as far as talent, and I think this is only good. To honor the sport, I think Tom Brady. I think it's time, bud.
Yeah.
45 is a good. It's a good, like, it ends on a 5. Yeah, it was either this or 50, and so I say end here.
No. Oh no.
You're right, though. I mean, I agree. And whatever he chooses to do in the future of football, whether that's play next year or play the next 3 years, it's not going to change the fact that he's the greatest of all time. But you're right. There's a bit of a, especially in younger fans, like if you're a young NFL fan and you've just kind of been following the last 2 years, you really have no idea what Tom Brady was like. And I know that's true for really any sport. If you look at, like, none of us were old enough to watch Michael Jordan in his prime or any number of players, but there's something to it. I think maybe for his good that this should be his last year, but again, I don't think he knows what to do without a football in his hands. So
No.
I expect to see
in interviews,
him
he's
on
still
a
talking about, like, this is
somewhere.
just another game for him. So he's taking it one day at a time, and that means he's not making a definitive. He's not being definitive, and I think he needs to be.
It wouldn't shock me if he calls it quits. I mean, he was emotional in his press conference last night after that game, but it would also not shock me if year 46 he's back on a roster, whether it's Tampa Bay. And you're right, Josh. At some point, Tampa Bay has to decide. Look, all due respect to Tom Brady, who won us a Super Bowl, all that. Yeah, at some point, Tampa Bay, you have to decide what your future is. Because, by the way, you play in the worst division in football. So if you capitalize now, you still have a chance to compete, to be in the playoffs. And, unless something changes quickly, and I don't think it will. I mean, I think the Saints have a chance to get better rapidly, potentially. But we'll see. We'll see. Very interesting.
You guys went 8-9 and still got a home seed. So I think the reality is there is nowhere to go but up in this.
Yeah.
Unless somehow, I was gonna say, Panthers, Saints, Falcons. There's nothing like, you don't see realistically seeing them in about as equal a position as anybody else within that division. So, yeah.
Yeah, in theory, Tampa Bay should have a leg up there. For now, we'll see what happens.
For now.
Draft upcoming. Love that time of year. Love free agency. We'll see. We'll get into it. But real quick, before we move on to just a quick preview of the divisional round games, I did want to touch on the New York Giants taking down the Minnesota Vikings on the road. This was kind of a result we all saw coming.
Are they the worst 13-4 team ever?
Well, yeah, there was that conversation was floating around on Twitter, but we talked about it last week. We did, if you missed it, we did true, false in the NFL. We asked, one of the questions we asked were, are the Dallas Cowboys the biggest frauds in the NFL? And a couple of us, and I can't remember who, maybe all three of us, said false, because we looked right at the Minnesota Vikings and said, hey, I think it's you guys. And honestly, the result of the game, I don't know if it was
right.
It was about right. Yeah.
It was about right.
Giants taking home a 31-24 victory. And everyone, of course, is slam dunking on Kirk Cousins after checking the ball down. They need a 4th and 8 to continue the game, and he checks it down for 3 yards, just typical Kirk Cousins. But let's be real, guys. Kirk Cousins was not the reason why the Minnesota Vikings lost this game. He honestly, all things considered, played pretty well. Was okay. That Minnesota defense is very bad. It is very bad. Now, Daniel Jones played out of his mind. He's played really well. I think he's really coming into his own. Danny Dimes, found a way. Now the Giants are going to try to take on the top-seeded Philadelphia Eagles for the 3rd time this season. So we've got now 3 NFC East teams of the 4 teams left in the NFC. But I did want to give a shout-out. Guys, here's the deal. Brian Daboll has just been incredible.
So good.
Because, yes, Daniel Jones is playing the best he has in his career. But so much of this is coaching and how they've coached him to limit mistakes. He has the lead in the NFL right now with clean games, that's a stat that refers to a quarterback not having an interception, not having a fumble. He has 9 of those games this season. I think the next best quarterback had 6. So he's been fantastic. Obviously, having Saquon Barkley healthy for a majority of the season, that clearly helps. And having a solid defense with some young studs that they drafted and picked up, like great for the New York Giants, because there were some dark years for this New York team.
Aaron, with that Daniel Jones point too, remember, this is a guy that the Giants said, we're not picking up your fifth-year option. This is a guy who had constant fumble issues in the pocket, was fumbling like crazy and just losing games for them because of the turnovers.
Yep.
So those 9 clean games, yes, like leading the NFL is always good at everything, but it's even more spectacular than that because he wasn't an average quarterback in turning the ball over before. He was among the worst in the league in those first few years in the NFL with the Giants. So Brian Daboll's just been incredible. And think about all the injuries and issues they've even had with the receiving core. I mean, just fantastic.
Yeah. So shout out to the Giants. They pulled it off. Vikings, unfortunately, another playoff loss for them. Guys, here's the deal too. Justin Jefferson in the second half had 1 catch for 4 yards. And that's partially good job Giants on defense, but that's partially Minnesota. What are you doing? Look, the difference is also, and maybe the Vikings couldn't trust Kirk Cousins. The Giants trusted their quarterback to throw it down the field and make plays. Minnesota was drawing up screenplay after screenplay after screenplay. Kirk Cousins has had pretty good stats and has not turned the ball over hardly at all. But what risk did he have to take this season, especially in the playoffs? Kirk, and I've said this before, and it's easy to dunk on it. Don't hear it that Kirk Cousins was the reason they lost. That defense was very bad. But at the same time, Kirk Cousins is just an average quarterback, and anyone that tells you differently is just wrong. I'm sorry, they're just wrong. He's an average NFL quarterback. Now, good, because there's plenty of quarterbacks out there that would be below average. But if you're Minnesota, and I know they paid him a lot of money, so it's probably too late. But is Kirk Cousins going to win you? Does he have the capability of taking you to a deep playoff run? I just don't think he does. Now, I think he does a lot of things well. The Minnesota Vikings won 13 games for a reason. He's not going to lose you a bunch of games and keep you out of the playoffs. But when push comes to shove and you have to go and make plays like Daniel Jones did, like a lot of other quarterbacks we saw, I just don't know if Kirk Cousins is that guy. I really don't.
No, Aaron, exactly what you said. He's not the reason they lost, but when has he been the reason they win?
Yeah.
Like, when has he been the reason they win? Joe Burrow has every excuse in the world to not win any of the 4 playoff games that he's won. He has no offensive line in any of them. He has injuries all over the place. It's a young roster. It's our first time here. It's a young head coach. Like, we're on the road the whole time. Like, Kirk, man, it's 4th and 8. Chuck it at Justin. It's 4th and 8. Who cares if you throw a pick? Who cares? It's 4th and 8. It's the game. I mean, remember that game in Buffalo where Justin Jefferson makes that catch of the year in between 2 defenders to keep that game going? And that catch was incredible. That game was incredible. But that game was what gave me some hope for Minnesota this year of, man, Kirk is just letting it rip.
And they had that historic comeback against the Colts too.
Yes. Where is that? We need you to let it rip, Kirk. Like, it's 4th and 8. It is 4th and 8. It's not time to be captain check down like you always are. It is time to rip that thing. And you know what? Nobody would have said a word if you had thrown it into triple coverage at Justin Jefferson and it was picked off or knocked away. Nobody would have said anything. And if they did, they're dumb, because when the game's on the line, you go down with your best players. Always. You always go down with your best players. If your best player's a running back, 4th and 1 at the goal line, you give it to that running back. You are giving it to him because you go down with your best player. That was incredibly frustrating, that last play. Otherwise, I was pretty neutral watching this game.
Yeah.
But that was frustrating just as a neutral fan of, like, Kirk, what are you doing? It's not like, oh man, he threw it 7 instead of 8. And I could see what he was thinking. He thought he was there. It was like, clearly it's a check down pass. And that was That was maddening. I will say just one quick thing on Daniel Jones. Be careful, New York, because now you're going to pay him a ton of money.
Yeah.
That Minnesota defense is atrocious. And I'm not saying Daniel Jones is Blake Bortles. He's better than that. He has better temperament. He has better leadership. He's more mobile. And he's
for like
younger.
70 yards too.
So I'm not saying he's that. But I feel shades of that Blake Bortles Jags team. Now it's different because the Jags had Leonard Fournette and a fantastic defense that were clearly carrying Blake Bortles. But Blake played that one great wild card game, and you're like, cool, sign him, man. Like, we made it to the AFC title game. Like, we were so close. Blake played pretty well in that playoff stretch. That was Daniel Jones at his absolute peak. It won't get better than that. It won't. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think it gets better than that game. I just don't. And that game was special. That was fantastic. But just pump the brakes a little bit. Be careful. Be careful about overpaying for Daniel Jones now off of the emotion of one game. So, we'll learn a lot against him with him against Philly, but just that last thing. And then the Niners look like they're going to just destroy everybody. So,
yeah.
If Brock Purdy plays like that.
Yeah. Pretty impressive. 11 straight wins for the 49ers. The interesting thing about paying quarterbacks, and this also has to do with the Cincinnati Bengals, who have to decide, what to do with. Well, they're going to sign him; they know what to do. But as far as cap hits, if you look at Super Bowl winning teams, I believe, and I'm trying to find the exact stat, I do not believe there has ever been a Super Bowl winning team whose quarterback has taken up more than 10% of the salary cap. Now, that's eventually going to change because guys like Patrick Mahomes are far above that number. Joe Burrow, when he gets paid, will be above that number. But it's worth noting if you're a team like the Giants deciding what to do with Daniel Jones, and that's a tough place too, because you probably do want to sign him because he's really come on strong this year.
Absolutely.
But if you shell out $200 million, I don't know. But on the flip side, if you don't sign him, what do you do then? It's not a great situation. I mean, it's a good situation, right? The Giants are in the divisional round. I think if you would have asked any Giants fan at all the last 5 years, hey, would you take a divisional round and a chance to pay your quarterback like a good salary and keep him there for a few years? They'd say yes, and they wouldn't even question it. But it's something to consider. Again, we will reach the point where a quarterback is making far more than 10% of the team's cap, and that kind of stat will go out the window. But it's an interesting little tidbit to keep in mind. And there's some quarterbacks, including Joe Burrow, who are under 5% because they're still on that rookie deal. And there's a lot of young quarterbacks in the playoffs, so we'll see what happens there. All right, so that takes us to the divisional round. In the AFC, as we mentioned, the Jags and the Kansas City Chiefs will kick off the divisional round at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, followed by the Giants and Eagles. Of course, both the Giants and Eagles, they're matching up for the third time. Then on Sunday, the Bengals and Bills at 3 o'clock, and the Dallas Cowboys at the San Francisco 49ers to close things out at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Johnny, real quick, how you feeling? Bengals getting a dub this weekend, or are the Bills going to take care of business at home?
It's going to be a fantastic game. I mean, Sunday is going to be brilliant with the Cowboys, Niners in the evening, Bengals, Bills before that in the afternoon. It's going to be a great weekend. I actually think Jacksonville keeps up with Kansas City and gives them more of a run than people think. And the Giants, Eagles, we saw what third game in the division does to teams with the Dolphins and Bills and Bengals and Ravens, and even the Seahawks for 3 quarters against the 49ers were played them tough. The Bills won't be able to take as advantage of the offensive line problems as the Ravens. The Ravens had the best defense in the entire AFC playoffs. Doesn't mean the Bills won't be able to get pressure. They have other good players, but if they had Von Miller, I'd be a lot more worried about that aspect. That will be the key. I believe Joe Burrow is protected enough and given enough time to have a vertical passing game, which they were not able to establish against Baltimore because of the lack of protection. The Bengals will win the game. And that is also because Joe Burrow will not make the play to lose the game that Josh Allen does. The Bills were in complete control of that game, and then Josh imploded for a quarter. And that's not the first time he does that. And he's brilliant. Josh is great, but he force feeds at times. And Bengals defense is very opportunistic. So I I don't feel great. I think it's going to be a fantastic game, but I certainly see an absolute avenue for the Bengals to win this game. I feel like it's a toss-up.
Yeah, agreed. One quick note, kind of going back to something we talked about. We are streaming live on YouTube. If you're new to the podcast, we stream every night. Well, usually at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on Monday. We've had a different schedule with the NFL playoffs. But Michael asked a question: how did Daniel Jones change to become the franchise guy? And I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about. I think coaching, if you ever thought coaching didn't matter, I think the Giants are probably one of the best examples that coaching matters. Also, the Jacksonville Jaguars, because basically the same roster last year won like 2 games. This year, they have this crazy comeback. They're in the divisional round. So I think, and look, I think it's probably worth taking some time to dive into this deeper, say, okay, why
Absolutely.
has Daniel Jones been able to turn it around this much? But I think the biggest reason and the most obvious is coaching, and what Brian Daboll has been able to do for the Giants has been nothing short of sensational.
Aaron, even throw the Dolphins in there real quick when Tua's healthy. What was the difference in those 3 quarterbacks turning it around this year compared to last year?
Yeah.
New coaches, but let's not necessarily X's and O's here right now. Confidence and belief of those coaches and those quarterbacks. They didn't necessarily come right out and say, go rip it, man, immediately. For Daniel Jones, it was an easing into the system. Trevor had some bad games this year, but he had to learn the system. Daniel's learning the system. Tua's learning the system. But those coaches, and if you see the stories like, having Tua like watch videos of him making great plays, it was just I believe in you. You can do this. You're a great quarterback. Having a coach that believes in you and having that confidence that they have in you is contagious. And it matters more than I think people think and know if you haven't played at sports at that level. Having that real confidence and knowing that you are backed by the coaching staff, you're backed by your teammates, and you're not looking over your shoulder to be benched. And it's more of a positive, we're going to go make this play, not, man, I really hope I don't screw this up. That's a really different mindset shift that is so vital to being good in this league and really in all sports.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will, of course, be reporting back next week. We'll see. We've got the AFC and NFC championships. Will be decided by then, Johnny. Hopefully, for your sake, the Bengals are there, and we have a happy Johnny to talk to next week.
Yay.
We will see. Excited to watch these games. I think you're right. I think it's going to be thrilling. I will say I think the 49ers beat the Cowboys by double digits because I think the Cowboys played their very best game against Tampa Bay, and the 49ers are a completely different style and are really good. And we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm expecting a little. Look, the Cowboys had maybe their worst game ever, Week 18. And they had their best game ever against Tampa Bay. I think they're somewhere right in the middle, and right in the middle, I think gets you beat by the 49ers by double digits. So that's my hot take. We'll see if I stick to it and put my money where my mouth is, if you catch my drift. But anyways, all right, that takes us to picks of the week. We don't really have anything new to report because we picked the Super Bowl, of course. But I believe all of our teams are still intact from last week. I know we all had the 49ers all in there in the equation somewhere. And we also picked the Australian Open, which kind of just got underway yesterday. So we'll keep tabs on that as well. But that takes us to this week. So last week we told you guys, hey, we're not going to have any points scored this week. We're picking some long-term things. This week we are doing the exact opposite. Guys, in 35 minutes, Kansas and Kansas State tip off from Manhattan, Kansas. So we're going to get some immediate rewards for ourselves, some points on the line. Our scoreboard is, which in case you're new, we've kept a scoreboard of our picks of the week ever since episode 1. The current scoreboard reads myself in the lead with 53 points, both Josh and Johnny at 49. So, guys, tonight, Kansas versus Kansas State. I'm taking the home team. I think this should be a fascinating game. I'm excited to watch it. Kansas has been just sensational at home, but they are not at home. They find ways to win at Allen Fieldhouse, but it's not there. So I'm picking the Wildcats.
I'm going against all odds because I believe Kansas won the last time they met.
Probably.
But
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's right. They won like 7 straight but Kansas State won 7 straight before then. I'm going to pick Kansas. I'm going to pick the Jayhawks. I'm going to pick away. I'm doing all the things against what you normally should do because it's fun. That's why it's fun.
Nice.
I'm going Kansas State. Kansas has really won a bunch of games that they shouldn't have at the end. They've all been at home, though. Like Aaron said, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, I believe, was on Saturday. I mean, they had no business winning that game, and they somehow survived. Eventually, that catches up to you. Now, listen, Kansas looks like the best team in the conference. I can't wait to watch Kansas play Texas. I believe Texas plays Iowa State tonight, too. So it's some good basketball in the Big 12, best basketball conference in the league. You reminded me this week, Aaron. They absolutely are. Also, Kansas State, if they're wearing those alternate, terrible, two different colored purple jerseys, they're unstoppable in those.
They're horrible, but you're true.
They're horrible, but they are unstoppable in those jerseys. If they come out wearing those, it's over. Sorry, Josh. It's done.
Hang on, I'm looking it up right now.
I'm going with Kansas State, too, especially if they're wearing the terrible purple jerseys.
I'm looking it up right now. I'm going to see what I can find as far as their uniforms. But while I do that, it is of course time for what we're following. So I'll hand it to one of you guys while I do some deep research.
Yeah, welcome to Chess Heads. This is a show within a show, highlighting the latest and greatest within all the sports I want to talk about, and I define that as loosely as possible. First off, Chess Head's proper update. If y'all remember, it was Neiman versus Carlson. In the lawsuit, it has come up that Neiman is also accusing Carlson, and by extension, Chess.com, who they have a multi-million-dollar contract together, of subverting Neiman's reputation before the event even started in St. Louis. That was back in like September, October. He said that for weeks beforehand, he was that Carlson had a quote a defamatory campaign, went as far as paying people to yell at the matches, Neiman is a cheater or cheater Neiman.
Wow.
At matches and since too, like after that as well, paying people to accuse him of being a cheater in public during the matches. And so this just got one little notch more interesting. This came out in the lawsuit. The lawsuit is, I believe, how big's the lawsuit? Neiman is still seeking $100 million in damages from Carlson and Chess.com, which, to be fair, if he's been essentially blacklisted from this sport, which essentially he's been in a few online tournaments. I think they had theoretically a rematch tournament between him that Carlson just immediately dropped as soon as they started the match. So this guy's essentially been blacklisted from the sport, from the tournament. So this is the only time I'm like, 100 million actually seems relatively, given what I know these winnings can be, that's relatively like reasonable, I think. Especially with if this comes out to be an egregious like move to push Neiman out of the conversation. However, we're going to talk about this is even for me, this is a stretch, but we're going to talk about Wikipedia. And y'all know Wikipedia. This is every high schooler's favorite source.
Yeah.
I love Wikipedia. I love Wikipedia. Unironically, I like the democratizing of information. I love the open source nature of this. There's of course some faults in it. Nothing's perfect. But and I'll tell you why, because I want you guys both right now. I want you to go to your Wikipedia tab that you have hot buttons like I do. And I want you just to type in corn. The food corn. Ohio, a lot of corn. We have a corn sculpture garden near where we all grew up. And I want you to see where it redirects you. Just type in corn, hit enter, and see what happens.
It took me to maize.
Did it take you to maize?
It did.
It did.
Isn't that interesting? Since 2007, there has been about a 15-year long debate. Every 6 or 7 months, someone changes it. And I have the logs in front of me. I actually have the logs. I go all the way back from December 13, 2006. There's been a massive debate within the Wikipedia contributor message boards. Now, am I on those? Yes, I am a member of like the Wikipedia editing stuff. I do
Yes.
help out with that, because of course I would.
Because you're
However,
a fine gentleman, Josh. That's
I'm
why.
a fine gentleman. I learned how to cite my sources, and I can help Wikipedia cite their sources. Yeah, there are ever since 2006. Yeah, I have user here moved page maize and changed it to corn in parentheses maize. Reason because everyone knows it as corn. Duh. Word to the dogs. Literally, that got rejected, and then it got moved. Tried to move again in April 26th, April 30th at 5:10, and then at April 30th again at 5:15. Literally 5 minutes later, it's been a debate. It got so heated that back in 2013, a Wikipedia admin twice, once in 2011 and then again in 2013, a Wikipedia admin, so like a guy who's actually paid by Wikipedia to be like a professional editor and a professional moderator, had to lock the thread, basically they locked down the page. They call that protecting the page due to
Wow.
what they're calling persistent vandalism, where people literally changing it to corn, changing the page name to corn.
That's awesome.
Now, here's the rationale. And we're going to pick a side tonight.
Yes.
Congratulations, whether or not it's maize or corn. Corn, as it's colloquially known, is a more common term. If you go to, you can go to a Google Books Ngram viewer. So basically what Google has done is categorized every book that has been digitized. So this goes back to by their estimations, about the 1800s. Pretty much every book that can be digitized since 1800 has been digitized, at least by Google and scanned. And if you look at corn versus maize, corn is used like almost 10 times as often as maize to refer to that big stalk of stuff with the yellow kernels on it. However, maize is the proper term for the corn that we understand. Corn can be a generic term for a lot of different grains of that type, as far as its usage. And so the one argument says, the corn guys are like, this is how people know it. Like certain regions, certain entire countries do not recognize it as maize. There are, let's see here. Yep, I keep finding it. Yeah, certain entire countries do not know the word maize. They know it as corn. And so to redirect is actually unhelpful for them. However, Wikipedia does have a thing where they say you must be as specific as you can while still being understandable when it comes to your title pages. And so maize is the proper term for that type of corn. And people have actually suggested whether or not we move it to the actual species, like hold on, let me see what the actual species is called. Zea maize, which would be closer to the actual like nerd definition. So, and this has been happening for 15 years. Every like 3 months, you can look on the logs. They just try and change it, and it's not been changed in 15 years. It is still
Awesome.
redirects you to maize, and there's a battle going on, and it's corn. It's corn.
Yeah, so I've got some thoughts. I'm obviously on Team Corn for a variety of different reasons, and because
you're a good person,
right? Not only do we just call it corn in our everyday life, but there's also terms that we have in our everyday language that refer to it being corn. Like, what's the maize version of corn on a cob? Maize on a what? It has to start with M. It can't be maize on a cob. That doesn't work.
No. Yeah. What other fun M word there is?
You know what I really love with my baked beans? Some maize meal. That just hits the spot. Put some butter on my maize meal. Yeah. I don't. It seems like there's an obvious solution where it's just like have a vote, and whatever the vote goes, that's just it. Like vote, like have all the members of the community that you're part of, Josh, like have it vote. Like that's the deciding factor. If you have to, like, make it a every 2-year thing where you vote and like, is it maize or corn this year? We'll see. But like, imagine the look that you would get if you go to a summer barbecue and you ask your buddy like, hey man, would you pass me that ear of maize? Like, what kind of look would you get?
No, I would immediately uninvite you from whatever cookout I was at, even if it wasn't my cookout.
Aaron, I actually think you just like undersold the best idea that has come out of this discussion. That is that we vote every year.
Yeah.
And you are legally obligated to
Yes.
call it either corn or maize based on how the vote occurred that year. And I don't just mean on Wikipedia. I mean in general day-to-day life. And if you call it the wrong thing, jail.
Straight to jail.
Immediately straight to jail. Community
listen.
service is allowed for this one.
We
But-
have to have some consistency,
as-
right?
But
As well
No,
as, and
no,
also, I mean,
just we
as
vote year to year. We vote year to year.
Yes, I agree, Johnny. But
Oh, no,
this is where
yes,
I'm going with
yes.
this. We have to have
And
some consistency
consistency
because
to agreements.
Nebraska is the Cornhuskers. If the vote that
Yes.
year is maize, the Nebraska Maize Huskers. Conversely,
Yes.
if it's voted corn,
Conversely,
Michigan, your
it's
colors
blue
are
and
now
corn.
corn and blue. Sorry, no more maize.
Yes,
Corn and blue.
correct.
corn and blue.
Absolutely correct.
Yep.
Consistency
Yes.
across all forums, everything.
Yep.
Because Maize Huskers sounds okay.
Yeah, that's not bad.
It's weird, but I can
I
deal
think
with
it's
it.
appropriate.
And maybe that's what turns
Blue
around
and-
Nebraska's football program, of all things.
Blue and corn. That's hilarious. I want it
That
every
would be
year.
what-
It's
that
so
would be what
dumb.
turns
It's so
around the
dumb.
football program.
Yep.
Honestly, yeah, blue and corn sounds so fun. Okay. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Aaron, would you like to go next or me?
Yeah, I can go next because I feel like yours is a good way to end. So as you guys know, I absolutely love baseball. Currently today, it was like in the 50s. So, I'm outside and for January, it's very warm. And I'm like, oh man, I just feel like, and I know we've got a bunch of college basketball and the NFL is still deep in the playoffs and all this stuff, but there's just part of me that I'm like, oh, it almost feels like baseball is here. Love that time of year. So here's just a quick baseball update. It's what I'm following. Number one, there's less than 1 month before pitchers and catchers report in spring training. So that's always exciting. Number two, I talked about last week, or maybe it's 2 weeks ago, that Carlos Correa, this ongoing saga of him and free agency and all this medical stuff surrounding him. In the end, it was the Minnesota Twins signing him for just still a buttload of money. So he was with the Twins last year. The Mets missed out on him, but they're still paying everyone they possibly can. So I think the Mets will be fine. The Giants may not be fine, and the Twins will be whatever. There's my very scientific breakdown of Carlos Correa free agency, but just thought if you didn't know how that ended, it ended with Minnesota signing him. Speaking of signing, this year Shohei Ohtani from the Los Angeles Angels is, I believe, on the last year of his contract. There are reports today that whatever team signs Shohei Ohtani, and again, if you don't know who this player is, he's basically Babe Ruth reincarnated, will become the first player in Major League history to get a $500 million plus contract. Just insane. Whether that's the Angels, the Padres are already throwing their name into the ring as possibly trying to sign him. I'm sure the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Red Sox and really all the big markets with money will probably try their hand at signing Shohei Ohtani, but prepare yourself now. Record-breaking contract incoming from Shohei Ohtani. And quite frankly, I don't know if he's worth it because I'm not sure any player is worth that amount of money. But if there was a player that got that kind of paycheck, it would be Ohtani, who is an incredible pitcher, incredible hitter, extremely likable. Just really every good possible thing you can say about Ohtani is pretty much true. But some team is going to shell out $500 million for that guy, which is pretty nuts.
Aaron, what I'm hearing is that the Cincinnati Reds will be right in the thick of it for this bidding war for Shohei.
Either that
Ohtani.
or plot twist, someone signs Shohei Ohtani and he just turns around and buys the Reds. Or really at that point, whatever franchise he wants. So, I don't know. Yeah, the Reds are going to be bad. I felt like I talked about them, like I kind of went on my rants last year about the Reds, and maybe we'll get into the thick of the season and it'll be upsetting for me again and I'll talk about it more. But like, I don't know, at this point, like the Reds are going to Reds. Like they've got one of the better farm systems, but like, what are you expecting from the Reds? Not to lose 100 games. I think that's the goal this year. Like, yikes, it's going to be bad. So the good news is I'm going to get some cheap tickets to their games this year and I'll probably be in attendance at quite a few, and we'll see. Maybe I can make it down to Arlington and catch a Rangers game with Josh or something like this as well. But anyways, yeah, so that's a quick baseball update. That's what I'm following this week.
Sad Reds. Yeah. So for what I'm following this week, let's talk about a story that was talked about immediately and then kind of lost in the shuffle of everything else going on in the NFL. And so at the Monday after the last game day of the regular season, you usually see almost all the firings, right? Like that Monday, that
Yep.
Tuesday, you see all the firings across the NFL. And one that was not that surprising, despite just receiving an extension, was Cliff Kingsbury, the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. That season just completely fell off the rails after making the playoffs last year. There was the drama in the offseason with Kyler Murray and his contract and the whole homework clause. And the season just went completely off the rails. Terrible year. The Cardinals fired Kingsbury and they also fired their GM. But anyway, Cliff reported afterwards that he bought a one-way ticket to Thailand afterwards. And why did he do that? Because this man had a fully guaranteed 5-year, $75 million extension signed before the season started. There are some caveats to that, which I can talk about if we want to. But this man bought a one-way ticket to Thailand with all that guaranteed money in his hands. Well, probably not. It's probably paid off over a course of time. But point is, he's getting all of this cash from the Cardinals anyway. So my question to you guys is, if you got a $75 million buyout for your job, where would you go and how would you spend your time?
So I'll just go because this came right to the top of my head. Again, going back to baseball, if you know me, you know that for years, and I almost do this every year, I plan out what a summer road trip would look like if I drove to every single major league ballpark in one summer. Usually it takes you like 60 days, but I plan it so you hit like also some really cool locations in the US, like, Mount Rushmore and some national parks and whatever there is to see in the area that you're at. So I think I would do that. I would probably buy an RV or like something real fancy to like live in or whatever. So basically I want to do the Ben Chase version of Major League Baseball. So that's what I would do. Now that's a relatively short amount of time compared to the money that I would have. So I'd have to figure out the rest, but that's where I'm starting at least.
Josh?
Man, that's just so much. Because like
you can go anywhere you want. You got 70. You don't have all. You've been receiving all the $1 million beforehand all as well, so you're doing just fine, and the checks are going to keep coming. So you can go hang out for pretty much as long as you want, indefinitely.
right.
He's been ignoring coaching calls, saying, "I'm not really interested right now. I just want to hang out in Thailand with my girlfriend."
Which props. Like, I feel like I don't know how to drop that much money because I'm like, I'd rather just like, I'd love to just, go through, like, I'd love to do like, this is going to be incredibly nerdy. I would love to go through like all of like Roman Brittany. I would love to go through like all of like the old Roman stuff. And like, there's just random, they were so big and so expansive for a time. Like they just have random like ish everywhere, like in Europe. And it'd be so much fun just be like, oh yeah, they put that thing here. But that's super cheap because I can just like backpack
You're backpacking
around
through Europe.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, that's okay. It doesn't have to be expensive. That wasn't part of the deal. That wasn't part of the deal. You don't have to. You can splurge on that trip. You can go eat at the fancy restaurants in your hiking boots.
I won't be staying in hostels. I'll tell you that.
Josh, that's part of the adventure of backpacking through Europe. You got to stay in the hostel. But
luxury glamping. How about that? I'll glam. I don't mind actually roughing it. I really don't mind that. We all did Boy Scouts together. I really do like the primitive, man versus nature thing. But you know what? If I got the money, I'll glamp. I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Honestly, I respect this out of Cliff Kingsbury. How many times are we always like, what is wrong with this coach that he's so like obsessed with coaching that he can't take any time off and leaps right back in after like getting this type of buyout, which is crazy. Which I will say, Cliff Kingsbury, like most coaches, has a competition clause type of thing in the contract that says like you have to at least be trying to be employed by another team to receive all of this money. Basically, you can't just chill out and do nothing and receive all the money guaranteed. You're supposed to try to find another job, and then the Cardinals paid the difference of whatever that salary is. Pretty much that's how it works, everybody. That's very simplified. But I respect this so much because he's just like, nah, man, I'm chilling out. I got my money. I'm like, that's cool. Like, I think more guys should do that. Anyway, what I would do, I love it. Josh is backpacking through Europe. Aaron is road tripping to all the baseball stadiums.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, I could see myself doing either one of those two things as well. What I'm circumnavigating the globe, man. I'm hopping on a boat, and I'm just going all over the place, year-long trip, taking the whole year. We're going everywhere. And anybody who wants to come can also come. I'll pay for them as well.
Very generous.
So that would be a blast to go with friends and anybody who wants to go. Circumnavigate the globe. Long time on a boat, but it'll obviously be a nice boat. And we're just hanging out. We're hanging out. We're going to see the beaches, but you'll also go to like Japan. And Josh, we can go to the Mediterranean. And yeah, we'll see North America too. Heck, we might even go down to Antarctica and hang out with some penguins.
Hey, you say that, Johnny. I'm gonna change my answer because that's a great answer. And you know what Royal Caribbean is offering right now? Launching in, I believe it's over 2023 and 2024. That's right, 274 nights.
Yes.
Straight.
Oh my
for
gosh.
a cruise.
Year and a half. That's like a year and a. Oh, that's awesome. Yes.
60 plus countries, 11 world wonders. You're hitting everything.
Is there a price tag on this?
Called to reserve. So
they didn't even list. They didn't even list the price. It's so expensive.
They're like, yeah, you don't even. You're gonna get
answer.
angry if you.
It's like 2/3 of the year you're gone on this trip, and they don't even list the price because it's so much money. Man, you're rich if you're on that trip.
Yeah,
man.
it starts, I believe, it would be like December 10th. It goes
Where does
December
it launch,
10th.
Josh?
Launches. I believe it launches somewhere. Let me check here. I believe it launches somewhere in the. I think it launches East Coast. I think it launches like Florida somewhere.
Okay. That's
and then
not
I
hard
believe,
for me to get to.
Yeah, let's see here. I think it launches. Yeah, it launches in the Americas. Oh no, sorry, it launches West Coast. It launches West Coast somewhere, and then takes you tentatively west. And it's going to give you go to the Asia Pacific, and then it's going to give you Middle East and Mediterranean, and then it's going to give you Europe and beyond. So December 10th, 23 to September 10th, 24.
I'm all about this.
Yeah.
I mean, just think of how many episodes we can record from the cruise too. Like we'd be in a new country every episode.
With 75 million, I don't know if I need the penthouse, but I'm going to use the penthouse. Like I'm going to take the penthouse.
Right.
Guys, this podcast, the views would go way up if we're just circumnavigating the globe.
One would think
circumnavigating the globe.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
we're
gonna lose
our
comments
lose
would
our
be shut up,
edge,
stop
though.
talking about sports.
So...
We want to learn about Greece or something like that. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Chess Heads takes a whole new meaning because I'm going to actually watch like some random Asia Pacific islands like chess match.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, we're going to see some random old Greeks playing some weird dice game on the beach, and we're going to get obsessed with it. And that's all we'll talk about.
Yeah, we would do something like that. The amount of time we spent on curling during the Olympics, I think that it's
can't wait.
By the way, no regret on that at all. But
no, I will not change a single thing on that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, we're gonna start saying, you know what? Here's what we should do. We should let you guys know that you should subscribe to us on YouTube so that way we can make some money and we can start saving for this 271-day cruise or whatever it is. So make sure you do that. It is free to subscribe, and you can find the live stream of this podcast as well as the replays, and we've got some other fun content happening along the way too. Like we recently put out a video on how the yellow line works in the NFL, which was kind of interesting. Upcoming either like literally within hopefully the next 24 hours, we're going to have a video on, yes, the NFL accidentally revealed that there is a chip inside the football, but they've not been using it, and there's a reason why. So that's on either TikTok or YouTube or whatever. So go follow us there. We've got more content there just outside of this podcast. But as always, I do want to say thank you for listening to this episode. We are inching our way towards 100. This is episode 95. So that's pretty crazy. If you have something fun you think we should do for episode 100, we're kind of open to options. I don't know if we've quite figured out what we're doing yet, but pretty insane.
There will be mayonnaise ice cream involved.
That is a good point. There will be. So looking forward to having Johnny eat that. So Yes, as always, thank you for listening. We really appreciate your support, as always. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. And for the three of us, we will talk to you guys next week. Enjoy the football.
So it does look like if you want to do the full thing, if you're paying in cash, it's actually a discount. But
I mean, you could pay in cash if you can pay for this.
One would think so. Michael, by the way, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. It looks like you're starting about 105, 110,000 for the whole thing.
Honestly,
that's actually not as crazy as I thought.
That's really not that bad.
And that's for a junior suite. So you can start.
Cruises.
I was gonna say it starts at 60 grand if you want just like a standard interior room, no porthole. 60 grand.
60 grand
starts at 60 grand. Or if you pay up front, if you pay 10% up front, it's 54.
What? That's less than my
4,000.
year's salary. I can do this. I'm just going to eat dirt for a year and then
eat like a king.
Yeah, that's right.
I've been on cruises, man. Like,
that's no
4,000 is not bad.
No.
Now, obviously that's cash. I wouldn't be able to pay in cash.
Well, yeah, but again, 60 grand for just the lead rates, like you can make that work
for a year.
Yeah, no, that's obviously no drink tickets. That's no additional excursions. Like that's nothing.
Sure.
However, 274 days.
Man, I'm gonna live large when I retire at 60. I'm going on.
And I will say something like a junior suite. Like those things are nice. Like I don't know if I would need much more than a junior suite.
Now it is a year, and I've been on cruises for like 10 days max. So that piece would be interesting. Like, would you need you need some more space being there that long?
No, that's fair. Yeah, as someone who's lived in a
especially
relatively
not
small
a window
apartment,
even. I'd kind of want a window.
Right. I was gonna say if you're going a year without a window, but you're on a boat.
You can always go upstairs. You can always go
in your
room.
Yeah, just use it as a sleeping area.
But you don't want to be in your room for a year. Now, I think I can do that, but can everybody?
No window.
Right.
Yeah. I need a window.
No window's tough. I've always had a window, so that's tough.
Now it's only another 5,000 to get an ocean view.
I'll
spend 5,000 to look outside.
Yeah, that's 100% worth it.
I for a year, you're looking outside for a year. Like the $5,000 is worth it.
Yeah, plus a flat fee of 5,000 per person for like taxes, fees, port stuff, all that. Which at that point
that makes sense. Really, this is 70 grand now. We're at 70.
About 70. Yeah, you're looking at about 70,000.
Honestly, if you want to do this trip, right, you need 100K.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm dropping.
100K.
I'm going to drop.
You're going to want to do the excursions. You're going to want to get the tickets. You're going to be able to want to get some beverages. You're going to want to get souvenirs. Like you don't go on that trip and like penny.
Are you kidding me? I can get a thing from every continent and every still standing like